Listen, I'm not going to apologize for the fact that I said I was going to do this for Wednesday and then didn't, because you're all greedy and you don't deserve an apology. That being said, I was too busy on Tuesday and time got away from me. And then unfortunately on Wednesday, I had dental stuff done and wasn't able to record a podcast because half of my face was frozen. So we're doing this on Thursday. It is going up on Thursday. And if you don't like it, find another podcast to listen to. Yeah, I kind of, Tuesday was a lot more hectic for me than I was expecting it to be. I had to build a bunch of furniture and move a bunch of furniture. And then by the time it was like 4 o'clock, I just didn't have the time or energy to keep doing it. And so, yeah, that's my excuses. They're like assholes. Everyone's got one, but nobody wants to admit it. Welcome to the worst year of my life. Although that's not what I'm changing the name of the podcast to. I'm still really torn on if I should follow through with renaming it or rebranding or changing it, or if I just keep doing the same thing I'm doing. Balls in my court, and I'm Angel Reese. I hope anyone gets that reference. Can you hear the cat? No. He's locked out of the room again. He doesn't like closed doors, but I can't trust him to not be in the way while I'm doing this. So unfortunately, he likes to be right in my face constantly, especially like where the laptop is, where the keyboard is, where the microphone is, where my water and coffee are. And it's a real hindrance on me being able to continuously record. So I have to lock him out of the room. I gave him a shit ton of treats and his toys, and now he's just trying to break the door down as he traditionally does. But he's always quiet when I don't talk. And then when I do talk, he makes meows. So unfortunately, he's not in the room. I am not going to do a ceremonial energy drink because it is 10 o'clock in the morning and I don't feel like that's a smart life choice. However, I am drinking a coffee, which I guess is a slightly more acceptable caffeine energy driver at 10 o'clock in the morning rather than a Monster energy drink. I don't know how it's become socially acceptable, but it is. So we're doing that. And yeah, so this is the best of 2021, which is what Scott and I were working on, prior to everything happening. And last episode I did sort of all the honorable mentions and things. And then I was going to do worsts and favorites, and we just ran and rambled. And now I feel like this episode's going to be a rambling episode because I've got other things I want to talk about, that are maybe sort of not as important or not as entertaining, but here we are. So like Sunday was the Oscars. If hopefully some people here who listen to this podcast were watching the YMS live stream that I was on with Adam and Gael, and I had a great time. Scott's been doing it for years. Adam nicely asked me if I wanted to fill in, and I said, of course I do. That'd be really fun. And then I spent almost the whole week panic watching everything that I hadn't seen that was of importance. And it was like really fun. I felt like I was a little bit more loose. Last time I did Adam's stream was sort of like the tribute to Scott thing, which I've said 1,000 times on this. Like I just was not in the mind space or like, the right moments to like go and talk and be live and be entertaining and be on a podcast, a stream. So this one was a lot nicer. I felt like I could channel Scott's absurdity and humor and vulgarity, and yeah, I had a really good time. Haru is very unhappy. You can hear that, I hope. Yeah. I'm not letting him in because he's going to be disruptive, as if he's not already being disrupted on the other side of the door. Yeah, as far as the Oscars goes, the overall, it was great. I thought Conan was absolutely the best host outside of Billy Crystal. And some parts were better than Billy Crystal. I love Conan. I've always loved Conan. Conan's like a comedy hero for me because like he's not afraid to just say like fuck it, like laugh and mock things, and like he has his own sense of humor, which is just like incredible. I mean, that's probably why he was such a great writer for, you know, like Simpsons and SNL and everything he's ever done. Did he do SNL? I'm not going to do too much research, but I'm going to say no. Yes. Anyways, his own shows, etc. But yeah, I mean, Conan's just like incredible. The opening gag with the substance, I couldn't believe they actually showed it on TV. That was really funny. His Amelia Perez jokes were great. His kind of shots at Jimmy Kimmel were great. But yeah, I mean, Conan's just an incredible comedian and an incredible performer and presenter, and he was awesome. But yeah, overall, like this was an Oscars that I wasn't as invested in as I have been in previous years. And it's not because there wasn't any good movies or performances or things that I wanted to win. I just, in previous years, like I had very hard stance on I need this to happen. Like I need Michael Keaton to win for Best Actor, which one he didn't do. And like I need I don't know, whatever. Like in the past I had such hard opinions on things, and I felt like this year, other than Kieran Culkin winning, I wasn't that like there was several options in the major categories that I would have been fine with, that like no matter what, I was like, if these three people win, or these one or two or three movies win, like I'm happy with that. It's not as in previous years where I was like, if this doesn't win, I'm going to be mad or I'm going to be disappointed. And so this year was a little bit like more just kind of a chill watch. I'm glad that Sean Baker won a bunch of stuff, because as much as I liked Honora, I think it's going to have to grow on me. I think I'm going to have to watch it a second time, because Maggie Madison's performance was good. It was really good. And the movie was really good. And I really genuinely enjoyed the movie, but I can't watch movies where people scream act and yell and talk over other people. I just find it way too distracting. So there was large parts of the movie that were kind of annoying to me. And like, I get it. This is the point of it's the point of the story and the frustration and anger and blah, blah, blah. But like, yeah, the constant screaming, and it really gets to you, especially when the movie's not that short, and that happens somewhat frequently. I'm not saying she doesn't deserve Best Actress, because she was great outside of the screaming. Maybe obviously I wanted Demi Moore to win, because who doesn't like Retribution? Who doesn't like redemption stories? Retribution stories. I like it when guys in masks show up and just start wrecking things, but without actually any end game planned for it. Nobody's gonna get that. But yeah, I like redemption stories, and not like she's like really needed to be redeemed, but just like, she didn't really get, she's a great actress. I really think she's a great actress. A lot of stuff she did in the 80s and 90s was incredible. And then she just sort of like wasn't getting work, or what she was getting was like very minimal. I do remember seeing her in, let's see if I can quickly look this up. I remember seeing her in a movie like somewhat recently. Maybe I'm thinking of, I think I'm thinking of The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which I was surprised that she was in, and I thought she was really good in the very like minor role she had in it. And then, yeah, I mean, I like her in, A Few Good Men and Now and Then and G.I. Jane, Mr. Brooks. I mean, Striptease is ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, she's in a lot of really good things. Oh, you know what I'm thinking of is I watched her in 2015's Forsaken, which is like a Western starring both Kiefer and Donald Sutherland and Brian Cox. And I like Westerns, and I was surprised she was in it, and I thought she was really good in it. Anywho, so yeah, like, I mean, I think as far as the movies go that were nominated, that was probably my favorite movie. But then I also thought, like, is this really an Oscars movie? Like, not that it's not good or not produced well, and like I love the fact that it was all practical effects, and you know, like, it was an amazing directing performance, and but just like, is body horror really Oscars movies? Because like, where do you draw the line of like, and again, I'm not saying that any of these movies should be nominated or should win, but like, where do you draw the line between like big blockbustery like movies and then unique, interesting horror movies? Like, I don't know. I guess it's kind of just the perspective of the Academy of what they consider to be nominated. Like, sometimes I just think like it's weird to put like artsy fartsy movies in there with just like some of the most like vulgar on-screen disgusting things you can watch, right? I don't know. Dumb opinion. I don't know if I really believe it. I'm just rambling at this point. For no reason. Yeah, so like, I mean, I don't know if I really agree with the Amelia Perez winning for Best Original Song, because all those songs were terrible. And despite the fact that it was for a movie that no one saw, I just still don't understand how Elton John didn't win. It's fucking Elton John. But yeah, as far as the Oscars goes, it was not the one like, you know, I was super invested in like when Three Billboards was nominated, or like Banshees of Inisherin. Like, I was really invested in those movies like winning things. Birdman, obviously I said Michael Keaton for that didn't win, but like, you know, there was other years where I was just like really invested in things winning, and this year I was just sort of like, I'm gonna be happy if, you know, any of these 5 movies like win the awards, which is sort of what happened, I guess. Like, the Brutalist and Anora, and I mean, Dune winning some stuff was good. I think maybe Dune should have won. I mean, I guess it did win the visual stuff. I mean, I don't give a shit about Wicked. I didn't watch. It was the only thing I didn't watch because, like, not only do I hate musicals, but also I hate movies. Like, I don't know. Yeah, this is just, again, the same thing with the substance. Like, you're nominating a movie that is almost entirely filmed in a giant blue room with very minimal real things in it. And that's, I mean, I don't know. I personally just hate those kind of visual effects. I think they're terrible. That being said, I do watch those movies and I'm like, can enjoy them, but like, is that really an Oscars movie to me? I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter because it didn't win any of the big awards, but, yeah, it was overall it was fine. It was a fine Oscars. Sometimes I'll go back and watch clips from the ones that I really care about and be like, man, this was such a cool moment. I don't know that I'm going to do that with this Oscars. I don't know if there's any moments like, I guess Kieran Culkin, but like, you know, not really. I also love the fact that they made it very clear, like early on, like, we're going to wrap this shit up real quick. Like, if you're up there and you're talking too long, they made the gag of John Lithgow, and then they like none of that mattered. Even when they tried to play people off, they were like, whoa, let me just, I'm going to wrap it up quick, and then not wrap it up quick. So like, yeah, I guess that maybe that was the gag, was like, we're not going to run this like other years where we just go forever. We're going to cut it off, and then you just let everybody talk forever, including like, I can appreciate the people who make short film, like animated short, live action short, like all that. But like, I don't know. Do we really give a shit what those people have to say? Like, not saying they don't work hard and they don't produce things, and then some of them go on to make other things. I believe like I believe in that sense of like accomplishment and like recognition, but like, do we really need to have those two awards on the show? Like, most of those people in the room and most people watching have no idea who anybody accepting the award is, and have including probably some of the Academy voters, have not seen any of those shorts. So I just don't know if that really fits. And also maybe best original song, I don't know, because like that's more, like that's more of a music thing than it is a filmmaking thing. So like, I don't know if I'm really that big on people going up and accepting awards. And I feel like a lot of the time too, it's just to give like Lady Gaga and Billie Eilish and those people Academy Awards, which whatever, they're just writing a song for a movie. It's not like they're in the movie or they have no creative contribution to the actual filmmaking. Anyways, but score is different because they're setting the tone, like tonal pieces for the entire movie. That I'm okay with. It's just like writing one individual song so that we can give famous people more, anyways. I still can't believe there isn't one for like fight choreography or stunt performance, even if it's not one of the ones that's not aired on television. I still just can't believe we don't do that. I mean, that is just as big of a part of most movies, even movies that aren't considered action movies, horror movies. Almost every movie has some form of stunt coordination to it. So I just can't believe that we haven't at this point, like, given, John Wick 4 Oscars, or every John Wick gets 1 Oscar, or like that kind of, like, Everything Everywhere All at Once had some good stuff in it too that should have won one. And yeah, anyways, I don't understand why we don't do that. I don't understand why we do short film and short animated film and original song, because I don't feel like anybody involved in that like anybody involved in watching or being there gives a shit about those things. I know I don't. I don't think I've like every best the winner for those two categories, I've probably seen 0.01% of those movies ever. And some of the people that have won them have gone on to like do things, or like people who are named people that happen to just make a short that gets, like Wes Anderson did those ones. I think Peter Jackson did some. Like I know Doctor Who's Peter Capaldi actually won the award in like 1995 for live action short. But like, yeah, nobody cares. You can really cut those out. And if you're not going to put stunt coordinating in or stunt work, then you're really just don't have a pulse on what actual movies are or movie making is. Yeah, anyways, that was the Oscars. I had fun. I'm going to be doing more YMS stuff going forward. I like spending time with Adam Gael, so, it's at least a nice change of pace from doing this podcast by myself alone in a room while a cat tries to break down the door to the room. So I'm going to do those. And then on top of that, so today is Thursday. You're probably hearing this Thursday or maybe Friday. Friday is like Christmas morning for me, because it is the NHL trade deadline, which is the last possible point in the season that teams can make trades before going into the playoffs. And that's always been a huge deal for me in my life, because it's what I love. I love hockey. I love that kind of thing. Also because I do roster editing for the NHL games. So I'm, making those transactions in game to have the most realistic rosters for when you play. And so it's just like a huge kind of thing for me. I used to skip school to watch it when I was younger. I would specifically book that day off of work sometimes, not always, but like sometimes if I had a job that like didn't really require me to be there like that day, I would just book the day off and then watch it. So yeah, tomorrow I will be busy watching every single trade that happens, and then immediately going into NHL 25 and doing all the transactions and setting up the teams perfectly. And then I believe, don't quote me on this because I hate the fact that I make promises and then never fall through with them because I'm lazy as shit, but I'm going to stream once I get those rosters completed after the trade deadline. I'll do some hockey streaming because I want to, and it just didn't make any sense until I got into a place where I was like, okay, this is where I want to be at to start, so I'm going to do that. So, but again, don't quote me on that, and don't come at me in the comments because you have no power over me. So yeah, tomorrow's a big day for me. I'm going to be excited. I don't have to do anything all day, so I'm just going to do that. And then I guess it was also brought up by a few people, which rightfully so, I will admit, was me being a greedy pig. There's a first for everything. And that was the time that if I do the All Request Live Spectacular by myself, that maybe $50 is high. And you know what? The reason I went with 50 is because that was half of what Scott and I were doing towards the end, which was $100. And I thought that was a reasonable number. But obviously more of that $100 was towards Scott than me, which I understand. And also there's probably less people listening to this podcast than before. So I will reasonably accept. I'm going to make my own guidelines here because I don't have as much free time in my life as when Scott and I did it, and he could just spend all day doing whatever he wanted. So I will do $25 for anything that is under 2 hours. I think that is a fair trade-off. And if you want a second person, I will do no price increase. I will just do the 25 and I will give them $0 unless you want a tip for them. But I will just do $25 for something under 2 hours. If it's something else that's over 2 hours or it's episodes of a series like we did before, we DM me and we can work out an offer. But I will do $25 for something that's under 2 hours. And then that'll be something we can continue on if people like it. And if they don't like it, then that's fine. We can stop doing it. But I will start doing that. It helps me also because I just had to pay for dental care and I'm going to have to pay for more dental care going forward. But I realized that I was being a greedy pig and I shouldn't become one of you people. So we'll do 25. Is that everything? Is that wrapping up the preamble stuff before I have to do the real stuff? I don't know. Tariffs are happening, but it's not really affecting Canada that much yet. So it kind of feels like it's just self-inflicted gunshot wound to America. But we don't need to get into that. I do like, though, that after all of this, in because of everything that's happening in the world, that like China's almost the good guy, I guess, because like they're going to really give it back to America. I saw a quote yesterday that was like, we are willing to go into whatever war with America that they need or that we want. And then I was like, oh, I don't know if that's a language you need to use to get back at America, but I guess that's how it's going to happen. So yeah, they're like weirdly almost turning face. Like America really is the John Cena of this, where like, oh, America's like they're number one, they're the good guys, and then I guess the rest of the Western world is Cody Rhodes and The Rock is Russia, and they really kicked Zelensky in the balls, I guess is the term. But yeah, it's just wild that, you know, I think I wish Scott was still here for many reasons, but I feel like if he was around still and this was happening, we would be having several episodes just based on the fact that China is making a face turn, because that's a very wild thing, especially for how long we've been saying that they're not the good guy. But here we are in 2025, and Germany and Japan and China and Italy are all the good guys, and America is the bad guy. So, but like, were they always the bad guy? I don't know. I mean, ultimately, at the moment, it doesn't really affect a lot of Canadians. It's actually had this big moment of like patriotism for us, where it's very much a focal point on buying Canadian and local and not supporting American companies. I mean, our country has banned selling American alcohol in our country, which is kind of silly, but I guess I get it because it is a major import into the country. But now we just can't, nobody gets to drink shitty American beer. We just have to drink sometimes shitty Canadian beer, but you know, that's the start of it. And like economically we'll probably be fine. I mean, I can't believe that Doug Ford is really like turning into being a hero at this point. If you don't know who Doug Ford is, he's the Premier of Ontario, whose brother used to be the Premier of Ontario and was addicted to drugs the entire time and then died. And he was a very, very funny man. But I can't believe that Doug Ford is like really like sticking to, okay, like fuck America, like we're gonna stop giving government contracts to American companies. They're gonna start shutting off power supplies to the United States. I do feel bad for Americans that are not, like it's not like we hate Americans. I have a lot of American friends and a lot of Americans that I truly do love as human beings. But unfortunately, like the ones that brought in the Orange Man, again, for now and forever, he's doing this. He's doing it to you guys, not everybody else. Like you have nobody to blame but your actual president and Mr. Musk for really trying to, not understanding the way that the world works or how words and things work, and then trying to convince people that that's the correct action, despite the fact that it's ruining lives for your own people and your own country. So I guess we'll just keep playing this out and see how it goes. But like right now in Canada, like it's fine. Like sure, there are certain imported foods that like are going to be too expensive, but like, or won't be imported into the country anymore. But guess what? That's fine because we're all just buying and eating Canadian food now, which we have plenty of. So it's not a big deal. I think Canadian lumber is going to affect Americans. Canadian oil and gas is going to affect Americans. Power supplies are going to affect Americans. It's not so much that he's punishing the rest of the world. He's punishing you people in America, and that fucking sucks. Best of 2021. Here we are, 25 minutes into this podcast. Will I ramble? Who's to say? I'm going to start with worst of the year because there's a lot. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got 7 that are the worst movies of the year. Typically, we didn't really do that, but sometimes we had 4, sometimes we had 5. I'm going to do this because I think this was a bad year, a big year for bad movies, because it was COVID times were happening and just garbage was being made. Actually, I think it's 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It is 8. We get a bonus one. I'll do the easiest one first. Is Free Guy. Scott and I did an episode of the podcast where we watched it, and if you want to go back into the Spotify for the worst year of our lives, or on youtube.com/@notscotthenson and find the episode. I'm not going to do it for you because I don't care, but we definitely did a Free Guy. Somebody paid us to watch Free Guy, and just for the information, you can go there and figure it out. I'm not going to go through the movie here because we already did an entire part of the podcast for that. I don't know. There's just like some bad. I don't know what I know what I think. I know what is the actual worst movie of the year. But the other ones are. There was a Netflix movie called Thunder Force that was Melissa McCarthy and who's the co-star of Thunder Force? I'm going to have to look it up because I don't remember who the other person is. I just know it was bad. Oh, it was Octavia Spencer. Oh, poor Octavia. She's so good. And Jason Bateman, he's also good. And Bobby Cannavale, he's also good. Oh, man, there's good people in this movie. Unfortunately, it's a piece of garbage. I will just state that it is 2 plus-sized women who gain superpowers and then protect the city. And it's a real, this time when fatty go boom, it doesn't hurt. Garbage. Unwatchable. Thanks, Netflix. You're terrible. Then Chaos Walking was also something that was just fucking terrible. I believe it's a Tom Holland and is it Imogen Poots? No, it's Daisy Ridley before she quit acting for health reasons. Yeah, it was pretty fucking terrible. It was like something the CW would produce that just like did not have the budget or the writing, and there's just like good pieces in it, like people that are good actors or are fun, but in tip normally, but like it's a fucking boring mess. There's like, yeah, it's in the future, and like everybody can, like, I'm just reading the synopsis again because like this is fresh in my head, but it's not. Unexplored planet as they try to escape dangers and destroy. Oh yeah, we're like inner thought. Your inner thoughts and feelings are like able to be heard by other people, and then everybody has animal companions, and then there's like a girl that shows up, and Tom Holland has to not be awkward about her hearing his thoughts, and like it's just the story sucks. It's like incredibly boring, just a bunch of conversations about nothing and like being shy and awkward and weird, even though you're both like super fucking attractive people. And it's like there's a lot of miscasting in it, and it's just very boring and not very sci-fi considering all the things you have available with like this girl can hear my thoughts, so I have to hide them and keep them in so that nobody knows what I'm thinking or where I am, and like lying, and like it's a fucking mess. Then we got Space Jam: A New Legacy. Literally nobody asked for this. LeBron is a horrible actor, and the story is so much worse than the original, and like all the meta like AI stuff, and like there's that cat trying to break in again. It's just, yeah, horribly written. Visually looks awful. Like it's LeBron James in a giant blue room with not another single living human being outside of the crew in the room. And it looks terrible at one point because it's like it's got all the Warner Brothers properties. The cast of A Clockwork Orange are seen like in the crowd watching the game. Rapists. Yeah, it's just horrible to look at. It's an awful movie. LeBron sucks. He's so monotone and not invested. You can tell it's just a money grab, cash grab for him because he wants to get into Hollywood, even though he's a horrible actor. Yeah, it fucking sucks. The second Venom movie, Let There Be Carnage. Again, it's just like all of the sort of like positive leeway, if you want to call it, like that you get from the first movie being salvageable, is just thrown out the window. There's no, like, the comedy's terrible, the acting is terrible, the visuals are awful. Just Woody without, like, as Scott always said, like, no stupid red curly hair for Woody was very disappointing because you led us to believe that's what he would look like, and then he didn't. Yeah, just everything. The story was terrible. Everything was bad. I think the third one was at least watchable, but I don't think this one's watchable. I think this one's pretty terrible. And then this leads me to what I guess are probably the three actual worst movies of the year, for very varying different reasons. Number three worst movie, I guess. I'm not gonna do this, but I'll just say number three is the Sia directed Music, which is a completely tone deaf look at what autism is. And it's the girl from all of Sia's music videos, and she has she's like a 12 on the autism spectrum, to the point where, like, like how somebody who's mentally handicapped, a retard as it used to be referred, would be portrayed in movies, such as, There's Something About Mary, or maybe Officer Doofy in Scary Movie. Like, those levels of tone deafness on what actual autism is, and then she like somehow managed to like crank it up to 12. So this girl who, like, by all beauty standards is like a very attractive girl, although she might have been a minor at the time, so maybe I shouldn't say that out loud. Well, it's too late now, it's on a podcast. And she's playing like, T-Rexy hands, like, at the chest, headphones on, like, biting her lower lip, looking up and away the whole time, like, making noises, and like being a full-on caricature of what mental retardation is. And then in her brain, she sees herself doing Sia levels type music videos where she's dancing around in these weird rooms and visuals, and like, does anything in the story matter? No, not even a little bit. Her grandma who looks after her dies, and then her mom, who's like kind of a shitty mom, has to start looking after her, but like can't, like, then starts like lashing out at society for the way that they're treating her daughter, even though this is completely normal, and she's a normal girl, and this is how she lives her life. And it's like, yeah, but she's not even playing autistic. She's playing like brain damaged, like not enough oxygen in the womb, but like somehow manages to like walk around and eat food without most of it going on the floor. Like, it's the most tone deaf, and like it's very uncomfortable to watch because she's doing it in like a completely serious movie, like a fully serious, like, this is a beautiful story about a beautiful girl overcoming her obstacles, and it's not that at all. It is a completely cringy, like, I have no understanding of what actual autism is movie. And it's disappointing because, like, I do enjoy Sia's music, but I do not enjoy Sia's directing or storytelling. And then another one that I really fucking hate is there's one director who I can't stand. His name is Rob Savage. He's done 3 movies, and only one of them was acceptable. Was the other one also 2021? Oh, it was 2020. I might have mentioned it in 2020 then. But there is Rob Savage did a movie called Dash Cam. And it was this thing of during COVID where the found footage stuff was you could only do it during, or like, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. During COVID, that this found footage trend was kind of starting to pick up, of like, you obviously can't have too many actors interacting with each other. You can't have anything that's elaborate or big because everybody has to kind of keep separate from them. And it's just this, like, everything's got to be about being sick and about isolation and being scared, but like done so poorly because you don't have the capabilities of making anything bigger because you're restricted by COVID, which, like, I guess typically I wouldn't be mad about, because in horror you have to be creative about like what you can and can't do, the kind of restraints and restrictions of like not having a budget. But in this case, it's like, well, let's try and see if we can make something for like $5 instead of spending money on it. We're already going to be broke and make this terribly poor budgeted movie. Why don't we just not spend money on it? So yeah, it's like it's the start of the pandemic, and there's a live streamer who like steals her ex-bandmate's car, and she's going to make I don't even remember. Like, again, none of the story or plot fucking matters. Nothing that happens in the movie is important, but the fact that she then like picks up this like weird woman who's like sick or possessed, and they're like, but they like don't do anything like original or creative with it. They're just like, oh well, she's a woman that needs help and she's sick, but like, okay, oh well, but we don't want to get sick. Yeah. And like, there's just nothing. there's nothing to it, and it's like, oh, like we're making these new crazy cool COVID horror movies. And like, no, you're not. You're making unoriginal, uncreative, like cheap out movies that you're like somehow getting distribution for. I mean, maybe I'm just jealous. I don't know. Maybe I should start making terrible COVID found footage movies. But yeah, just like everything about it screams like, just like I'm not even trying, and yet somehow I'm going to get this out there. And I hate his work. I hate him. Although what was the other one called? The Barbarian? No. Because Barbarian is really good. What did you direct, Rob Savage, that I didn't hate? Oh, The Boogeyman. It was fine. It was better than his other two pieces of shit, which were Dashcam and Host. Anyways, the worst movie of the year is very clearly The Beach That Makes You Old. It's very, very, like, it is enjoyably bad. Like, it is one of those movies where you're like, I know it's terrible, but I'm enjoying it so much because it's terrible, but I know it's a fucking awful movie. Like, the amount of time that Mr. Night Shyamalan spends just telling you what's happening is the entire fucking movie. Every time any little thing starts to occur that you, the audience who has eyes and can visually see, he's having characters around you, the audience, explain to you exactly every little detail that you, with your own eyes, just saw happen on the screen that you saw at the same time as the characters did. And it is the hackiest of filmmaking. Like, it's like he's treating us as if we're stupid. Like, I guess you'd have to be stupid to pay money to see this movie. Oh, except for I did. I saw it in theaters. But and I also saw Trap in theaters. So like, I guess I'm the idiot. But it's like, it is an enjoyable bad movie. Like, there are bad movies that are boring and stupid, or just like, you know, don't have the legs to really get through an entire feature. This at least was a fun bad movie, but it is the worst movie. Yeah, like, he just really just treats you like you're stupid, and like, well, I don't think that you really saw this little tiny detail that was right in center frame of the movie as it was happening, and I'm going to explain that to you because I'm a fancy girl and I know how to make films. What a twist. But yeah, it's just so fucking dumb. And like, it's very much like what a lot of horror movies do, and especially Mr. Night Shyamalan does, of like establishing very specific guidelines or very specific rules to the world or to the story you're telling, and then you're like, but they only really are like in effect for like 70% of the movie. The rest of the time we're just gonna like kind of ignore them and not follow the rules because we need to move this piece along, or I want to do this cool visual shot, but it doesn't work if we do the thing we've established is happening at the beginning of the movie, so we're just gonna move past it and yeah, give me your money. So yeah, it's a messy nightmare. I believe at the time when we saw it, there was a discussion of how dummy thick the daughter becomes when she gets older. Don't worry, the actress is of age. We confirmed it when we watched the movie. But yeah, Old is very clearly the worst movie. Like, there's not even a competition for how bad that movie is. And Trap is just as bad, but is way more enjoyable. Actually, if you ever want us to do, me and Kelly, friend of the podcast, friend of real life, Kelly Summers, to do a full review of Trap, you can pay us and we would love to do that, because we watch it in theaters and we had a great fucking time with how terrible that movie is. That movie's less enjoyable because it's mostly just 90 minutes of a concert to push M. Night's daughter's music career, but the other things that are happening away from the music career are next level crazo, and I would love to do a full podcast on it. Excuse me. Yeah, so that is the worst. Those are easily the worst. And then I'll do the faves. So my faves for 2021 are the ones that like didn't make the list, but are something that either I really enjoy watching, or like Scott used to always argue with me that it would be like those are the ones that just didn't make the cut, or or the 11, 12, 13 or stuff like that. But like no, like these are the ones like I've always said across the podcast every time we've done this, is that the faves are like the ones that, listen, I know this isn't like a top 10 movie of the year, but it's something that I'm going to rewatch, or that it's going to stick in my brain, that is really fun but probably fun and dumb. Or you can definitely hear that, right? Harv, shut up. Take a nap. God, that cat is going to destroy that door. I'm going to go open it. There's going to be claw marks on the outside. Yeah, so I've always looked at it that way. That's not how Scott and I argued about it frequently, because that's not how his interpretation of it was. Because theoretically, if you were doing it that way, Scott, then your fave would be the 1, 2, 3 of the year, you dumb fuck. Anyways. So, and weirdly enough, two of them, one of them was like maybe pushing into the top, like it was like in consideration, it would have been like a 14 or 15 of the year maybe. And then the other two, are like really, really good, really fun movies to watch. And I also just now have like kind of a personal connection with them because of reasons I will be stating in a second. So the first one is Nobody, which is the like actiony John Wick ass kicker starring Saul Goodman himself, Bob Odenkirk, which I remember at the time when it was like announced, and I was like, oh, I don't know if that's really gonna work. Nothing against Bob, because like, listen, I fucking love Bob. He is such an incredible actor. He's funny. He's got range. He's believable in everything he does. And I was like, okay, it's cool that Bob is getting this opportunity, but like, he's almost 60 and he has never really done, like, other than kind of getting roughed up as Saul Goodman. Saul Goodman. It's all good, man. I just clued into that. He's, like, it's not like he's known for doing physical action, but man, it is awesome. It is exceptionally good. Bob Odenkirk action hero is definitely something I could get behind. Like, I did spend a lot of the movie like giggling to myself at the fact of like the things Bob was doing, but it wasn't in a like, this is dumb and I hate it way. It was like, man, I can't believe that Bob is doing this. Like, it is incredible that he is being able to like convince me he's an action star. And it was awesome. But then and another really funny thing about it too is like, if you look at the life, career, and body trajectories of the Mr. Show gentleman, where Bob is still this like thin, kind of wiry, kind of like energetic twink, and David is a big fat bear with a giant white beard. It's just very funny. But yeah, like there's a lot of tons of like great action, and there's like dirty bombs, and he like fist fights 5 guys at one time in a bus, and the villain was a Russian actor who he actually was just played the father in Nora, but he is one of the main characters or he is the main character, I guess, of Andrei Zvyagintsev Leviathan, which was my 2014 number 1 or 2 of the year, which is I didn't know he spoke English, so having him as the bad guy was pretty incredible. Connie Nielsen was great, Christopher Lloyd, Michael Ironside. Like, there's a lot of like RZA was in it. There's a lot of really fun like side characters, and just like, yeah, it's a real John Wick-esque movie. But it is, and like I can confirm this, it is the last movie that Scott actually watched, because when we were doing this, I told him he has to see this one, and then the next movie I'm going to mention is the other one I know he needs to see before we like do the list. And so I can confirm, if you want to know, this is the last movie that Scott actually watched, and I know he liked it just as much as I did, and I don't think it was going to be on his list, but it might have been in his favorites, just like me. So yeah, so like that's one of my favorites for the year. The other one is Saloon, which is something it was on my watch list for a long time, even before we were doing the lists, like since 2021, but I just like never got around to it. I just kept hearing really good things about it, and then I watched it and I was like blown away by how cool this movie is. So it's based in Senegal, and it's based in Senegal, but it also takes place in Guinea-Bissau, and it's 3 mercenaries who get hired to go and extract a Mexican drug dealer from Guinea-Bissau and then smuggle him into this, like, they're smuggling him out, and then they end up getting stuck in this like mystical region that's called Saloum in Senegal. And it is just such a cool, smaller budget, like African film, like entirely made in Africa. The cinematography was incredible. It was beautiful. Just like the landscapes of, like, you know, God, that cat, he's like that door. I'm not gonna have a door anymore. The landscape of like the visuals of the land and where they're traveling across for real, like the desert stuff and like the rocky terrain and everything is like, it's such a cool, unique visual that you won't see in like a lot of movies. There were like these huge, vast aerial shots of the landscape of the West African desert and the coastline, and they just looked incredible. And it was like much higher quality, like editing and transitional work than I was expecting with it. It was very, very cool. The acting was super strong and intense, and especially considering like nobody knows who any of these actors are unless you, I guess, like watch like those local to that region movies. I mean, I guess some of them got work after this movie because it was so like well known, but one of them is in Gladiator 2. But yeah, like it's just it's so unique that it's no-name actors doing an amazing performance. It's almost like there's so many international films that have great actors in them that we shouldn't just be watching 5 movies a year starring Kevin Hart. But yeah, like the visual effects were more impressive than I expected them to be. Like I was kind of thinking it would be like everything would be great, and then the visual effects would be kind of like as minimal budget, kind of like hacky as you could. But like they were pretty good. They were above like standard for like good effects. And then like I really liked the sort of like there was some a treasure hunter kind of like side thing that was going on. There was great folklore of like the region, and then it all kind of builds like a really crazy, like feverish dream kind of finale. So like I highly recommend checking it out. It is not very long. It's 84 minutes. Shout out to Kathy for purchasing me the Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray of it, because it was way too expensive for me to order it into Canada. So shout out to Kathy, my favorite cholo. And yeah, so like, and I can confirm as well that was the second to last movie that I can know of that I know Scott watched. So there, if you want to do those 2 movies and then be sad about Scott not being here, I recommend doing that. And the final one for my faves, is boss level. Like, by all accounts, I know this should be a bad movie, but I don't give a fuck because it is entertaining as hell. It's like a former special forces agent that gets trapped in a time loop and just keeps reliving his death over and over. And then he has to try and track down the person that's like done this to him. It was incredibly ridiculous and violent, and the kills and the blood and stuff. Like, yeah, maybe we've seen this kind of stuff in like some shows or like other things in the past, which I guess kind of deems it as not original. But like the way that they put everything together and like the complexity of some of the like storytelling of how he's getting killed and reborn, and then there's just like the fun scenes of like him sort of like you're seeing the steps he's taken as every time he's reborn, he's like, okay, I got to avoid this and I got to move over here. And then this happens. And then, but you're still getting to see like the like, oh, and I'm fucking dead. And then he reborn. And like, yeah, it's really, really fun. It's got, like an amazing performance by Michelle Yeoh, even though she's not in it that much. Ken Jeong's in it. He's got a funny role. Will Sasso's got a really funny side role in it. And then, but then of course, like, and Frank Grillo is the main star, who I really like. Frank Grillo. I don't know that he's necessarily a good actor, but I do like his work. But I mean, the main star of the movie is my boy Mel Gibson, who's the bad guy, because he's just fucking chewing up scenery. Like he's there for the paycheck, but he is the most enjoyable part of the movie. He's a wild man, and I love him. I know I shouldn't. I know he's technically a dickhead, but like I fucking like Riz Master Mel Gibson. I fucking love him. But yeah, it's done by the same director who did The Gray, which I love. And also in 2021, he also did another movie called Cop Shop, which is Gerard Butler, also Frank Grillo, and maybe one of the most insane, over-the-top, ridiculous performances by Toby Huss. It is like I could just watch his parts of the movie and I would be so happy. But like, it's a really fun movie too. Not as good. I think that there's a lot more like downtime in the movie. But yeah, it's a really fun movie. So Boss Level's like, yeah, I could watch a movie like 100 times. It's so much fun. Yeah. So those are the faves. And then I guess all that's really left is the top 10, which of every year that Scott and I did the best of the decade, and then we did 2020, you know, it's a struggle to like, you don't want to make like in your brain, you don't want to make the wrong choice, and you like really struggle with what goes where. But like for me, this was the one that the top 4 consistently changed every time I looked at the list, and every time I went through what I was like looking at to like put in the places. Like one at some point, 1 was number 4, number 4 was number 1, number 2 was number 1, number 3 was number 1. They were all in each other's places, because I was like really struggling with, I don't know what I actually think is the best or the movie I think is the best. I ended up going with the one that has sort of stuck with me the longest, or like, I guess had the most like, yeah, the most like the lasting impact on my brain. And so I'm not going to change anything else, even though I literally just did change one, but it's because I meant to change it earlier and I didn't. So I'm just going to move that here, and then we're going to move this one here, and then we're going to delete that. There you go. 4 and 3 switched because I meant to do that before I started recording and then forgot. Yeah, so 2021 was a year I know that I had excluded some movies in the honorable mentions that I would have typically maybe put on the list, but I just felt like I had better connections with other movies, like Dune and The Lost Daughter, and I said a couple other ones on the podcast. Like, maybe those would have stuck in there. Like, they could have been challenging for a spot, but I just kind of went for the ones that like I enjoyed more, and that I had like a longer lasting sort of memory in my brain of it. So number 10. Number 10, I went with the Jim, my boy Jim Cummings, who I love to death and has liked one of my reviews on Letterboxd. So even better for me. The Beta Test, which, if you're not familiar with Jim Cummings on this podcast, then have you even listened to the podcast? Because both Scott and I have talked in length about Thunder Road and The Wolf of Snow Hollow, which are both incredible movies. And then this is the third feature, although he co-directed but still starred in the movie, as did the other co-director. But yeah, I mean, Jim's got a very, very specific dry humor about him that he brings to all of his movies, especially Thunder. And I guess it's both of them. I guess it is really both of them. But yeah, he's got a very specific style of humor, and it's very dry, and it can be very put right into like a dramatic kind of story, and it works really well. And he's very creative, and I love him to death. And this could just be a Jim Cummings podcast, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want to fangirl too much. So yeah, so it's like the story of kind of like a sleazy, skeezy Hollywood agent. He's got a fiance. He's X amount of time sober. I don't remember. I feel like in every movie Jim is sober. I know in Thunder Road he is. I don't remember Wolf of Snow Hollow, but like he's very vocal about being a long time sober, which I'm assuming is maybe a truthful thing. I never looked it up. But yeah, he kind of gets wind of, through a person he knows, this like weird occurrence involving receiving a purple envelope that it invites you to have like a random sexual encounter with a stranger. If you just you go to this place in time, you put on a blindfold, and you don't know what the situation is, you don't know the person, and then you just do it once and that's it. And so he finds out from this person that's going to happen, and then he ends up getting, even though he's engaged to his fiance, and but he's very much like so invested in like figuring out this thing, and I guess like it's a random sexual encounter that no one's ever going to know about. So he receives the purple envelope in the mail, and he goes and he meets this woman, and he goes to a hotel, and he has this encounter with her, and then leaves, and then in theory that's it. And but after the fact, he becomes like completely obsessed with trying to discover like what the sources are, and where this is, like who started this, where all the information comes from, how they knew to get people together, what's the kind of story of the thing, of the envelope, which then starts to like kind of, deteriorate his relationship with his fiance, and he starts like acting really strange, and she notices that he's acting strange, and she kind of asks him like what's going on, and he has to play like he's lying about being happy and lying about being okay, and he's just, I'm just like, it's stress about work, or whatever, right? But he's like so obsessed with finding out the truth that he and then he starts impersonating an FBI agent, and he tracks down the person who sent the envelope, and through like interrogating this guy about it, kind of finds out that there was supposed to be a next step that was taken, but it never happened. And because it never happened, that's sort of what has led to him doing all of this insane work. And so, like, you know, this investigating and lying and being weird, like all these things. I don't want to give away. I'm going to try not to give away the ending to some of these, because some of them like have such an interesting ending that I don't want to like ruin it if people are going to end up watching these movies. But yeah, like, the whole rest of the movie is after he finds out this thing he was supposed to have been told after the initial intimate encounter, and so now he's like kind of thinking, like regretting and thinking of all the decisions he's made over the course of the movie towards the end. And then there is like a kind of a reveal at the end, and et cetera, et cetera. So like, but yeah, I mean, Jim's humor is amazing. I mean, I think his regular acting is also really strong. He's like a kind of an unsympathetic character, yet for the most part, like the way that he moves through the movie is like, you know, he's not necessarily portrayed as a hero or like a good guy. He's just making like very erratic decisions and very bad guy decisions that are like kind of ruining him, which is very funny. So yeah, like, I mean, there you go. Jim, I love him. I hope he makes a million more movies. I will see all of them. He made an incredible short film this past year called Is Now a Good Time, which if you haven't seen it, please go see it. It is on YouTube. It is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It's like 12 minutes long. It is incredible. Moving on to number 9 is, I think, a person who got quite a bit of attention during the best of the decade, which is Asghar Farhadi, who made a movie called A Hero. And Farhadi obviously makes very, because he's an Iranian director, and he makes very like human stories, but they're like very centric to the culture of living in Iran or like in the Middle East, but they're like very human stories, like nothing wild. Like, yes, there's like little elements of like crazy things happening in the movie, but they're just like, you know, normal human mistakes or accidents or cultural things that we don't understand in the West, but they're like so human, which I love. I really do love human stories as much as I love sci-fi and horror and like ridiculous fucking things. I do really genuinely like just like grounded in reality, just very basic human stories. And so this one is I mean, it's an incredible story. So it's a man gets released from prison, and he has 2 days to settle an unpaid debt with his brother-in-law. But then he, you know, when he's trying to make amends with his brother-in-law, and it's like the brother-in-law has kind of had enough of it and just wants him to pay off the debt, you know, like he'll forgive him if he pays him back. But he has, so him and the man after getting released from jail is Rahim. When he gets released, he goes and kind of meets with his girlfriend partner thing, because him and his wife are estranged, and he happens to like she discovers like a handbag full of coins I think it's in a taxi, or when she gets out of a taxi, and she presents it to him as like, we could probably use this to pay, like if we sell this, we could probably pay off your debts. And they kind of have like a moral kind of conflict about it's not theirs, but yes, it would help him pay off the debt, and then he would be free and they could live their life together. And so what they do is they end up going and trying to pawn it at a gold pawn shop, and it turns out that it's actually worth way less money than they think it is. Like whatever the amount he needs, it's roughly 50% or a little bit more than 50%. And so he kind of has conversation about, you know, it's not enough, but maybe if I talk to him and say I can pay half now, you know, like anyways, after like a long conversation, he ends up going and living with his sister and his other brother-in-law. And they as he's been there for a little bit, whatever, the sister discovers the coins and kind of says to him, like, you can't keep this. Like, this isn't yours. It doesn't belong to you. You need to find the rightful owner of this money, because that person could need the money. And so he kind of reluctantly agrees with her and says, like, well, it's not even enough to pay off the debt. I'm going to just return this to whoever. So he goes and he, kind of gets word out there that he'd found this thing. And when the person whose it actually is comes forward, he's like praised as a hero of like, wow, like only a really good person would give back all of this money. Like a monster, or a bad guy, a scumbag, like you think he is from being in jail, like he would never give the money back. But like, so now everybody's got this like very positive outlook on him. And because of that, like good praise and charity, family and friends kind of get together and they're all helping him sort of like, okay, like we need to find odd jobs for him to do so that he can make money so he can pay off this debt. So if anybody knows anybody that he can go talk to, or he can, so he's kind of in the process of trying to make a quick buck as fast as he can to pay off this debt to his brother-in-law. And, he's going to, somebody finally gets him a job interview. And when his brother-in-law finds out that he comes to like a meeting with everybody where they're, the local group of people that he knows, his friends and family, like are talking about like, well, we can raise money doing this and he can do this. And so the brother-in-law finds out that like he barely has any money to pay off the debt, even though he's already been out for like a little bit. There's like all these rumors that start spreading about whether or not finding the coins was actually truthful, which at the time, like nobody actually knows that happened. He's just sort of spreading the rumor around that like, well, how do we even know that he didn't like steal the money and try to return it to this person for a reward or like something along those lines. And, then like just in my notes, I wrote like, then we get into like a Persian cultural bullshit. So he goes to this interview to get the job. And when he goes in to talk to this guy who he's been talking to for like a day or whatever, like, pretty friendly, positive conversation about giving him a job. And he goes in and the boss guy who's going to hire him shows him text messages that he... See what I'm dealing with here? See what I'm dealing with? A crazy cat. I can't let him in because he'll knock shit over. Okay, fine. Maybe I'll let him in. Once I'm done with a hero, I'll let him in and he can sit on the top 8. So yeah, this boss who he's got this job interview with shows him text messages that were anonymously sent to him of the text conversation between Rahim and his brother-in-law when he had initially found the money and had said, what if I pay off half now? Will you sort of like tell the police that I'm not, like get him out of trouble and get him out of jail for good while he works off paying the other half of the debt? And so he shows him these text messages that kind of prove like, how did you have half the money a week ago, but now you don't have the money? And so that leads to Rahim going and confronting his brother-in-law about, kind of lying and deceiving him and then like exposing him and like, we're supposed to be family. How can you not help me? Blah, blah, blah. And then, again, I don't want to spoil the ending. I don't want to kind of give away what I want people to watch in a movie. I mean, obviously it's in Farsi. It's not the most palatable movie for people if you don't want to listen to read subtitles and like whatever, but like I do want people ultimately to see these movies. So like the ending is kind of like a little like a big incident happens and now he's sort of like in more trouble, but he's trying to it's obvious he's trying to like make amends and he like wants to pay the debt off. It's not like he's down on his luck. He just wants to try and fix the problem with his brother-in-law so that he can get out of jail and just live his life. And like a big incident happens and there is kind of like more of a reveal of like why he owes the brother-in-law money. But again, I don't want to give any of that away because I want people to actually like sit down and watch the movie. So, but yeah, for hotties, a hero is my number 9, and I'm gonna go let an insane cat in the room so he stops trying to break the door down. Jesus fucking Christ. Like, it's just a door. Why are you freaking out? Why are you freaking out? Oh, because I don't know what's going on in the room. You purring? I can't even tell. Okay, go on the bed. Go on the bed. Leave me alone. Don't knock over my water. If you knock over my water, I'm going to be pissed. I hope everybody enjoyed the part of the podcast where I have to stop recording to let a goddamn cat in the room. Okay. Number 8. So in the previous episode, I had mentioned that there is an even better documentary than whatever I said the documentary was for the honorable mentions. I don't even remember. 14 Peaks, maybe, or The Rescue, I think, maybe. And that documentary is Ascension. Not The Ascension, not to be confused with the NXT Tag Team Champions and then main roster jobbers, The Ascension. This is just Ascension, which is a documentary about it's very, very cinematically. If you've seen Samsara or the other one, whatever the other movie is, Samsara is Rabtego is Bakaka Baraka. That's what it was. Baraka. It's done very much in that style of you're not really interacting with the characters or the people in the movie. I mean, it's a documentary, the actual human beings. Like, you're not interacting with them. You're just watching their sort of their life as it kind of just goes on naturally, like in a normal sense. But you're seeing the sort of like, I guess it's portrayed as the Chinese dream, which is like the just like the drive of Chinese people that they've had sort of like built into them by their government forever, of like obsession with what did I write? Like the social classes and productivity and cultural innovations, but it's like done in a very it's a beautiful movie. Like, if you have the kind of autism where you like looking at like production assembly or like a big visual overhead look of 1,000 things that look exactly the same, that are all like perfectly placed in lines and like if you have that kind of autism, this movie's very much for you. But yeah, it's just kind of a look at it's kind of uncomfortable, because you know how much China owns everyone's ass, and then you're like, oh, but they also make literally everything that we have. So I guess it's fair that they own our asses. But yeah, like it's a lot of like, I think I read about the production of it, like the director. And I guess there must have been like, I don't know this for sure, but there must have been a lot of lying to the government officials about like, no, like we're making this very positive, like, very pro republic look at like their industrious nation and, like how everything goes, like why China's the best. And like, so I feel like there was definitely some lying about that. It doesn't necessarily make it doesn't make China look bad, but you can definitely look at it and say like, wow, like that doesn't seem like a happy place to live and be and work. There is one very, very sad moment though, where you just see these like girls working in a factory that are like assembling sex dolls. those poor girls making those sex dolls made me so sad, almost as sad as anyone who would actually buy a sex doll. But yeah, like it is a visually beautiful movie. It's kind of scary in the sense that like, yeah, like, you know how big and powerful China is. But it's just about the visuals. Like there's no narrative of the story. It kind of just jumps from like this manufacturing factory to this thing. And then it goes to like, I think there's a water park at one point where it's just sort of like the leisure part of it. And then it's like influencers and them like showing products and like trying to get popular on social media so they can make money. And so like, yeah, it's just like a kind of a look at what we don't see in the Western world from China. But like, yeah, again, beautiful. It's a little bit scary. It's like in the sense of Big Red. But yeah, it's a very, very cool movie. Like I really, really enjoyed it. And I highly recommend anybody check it out if you haven't seen it. Obviously, I say that about all these movies, but this one's really good. Number 7. So number 7 was, so earlier on last episode, I had said that Drive My Car was not Ryusuke Hamaguchi's best movie of 2021. And that's because I think Ryusuke Hamaguchi's Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy is his best movie of 2021. Like I said about A Hero, I really like human stories, very down-to-earth, relaxing human stories. And this is very much that. It is told in 3 small stories, 3 separate stories. So the first story is this woman who is talking to her friend, and her friend is sort of like gushing about this new guy she's seeing and she really likes. But like through the details of their conversation and her kind of describing what this guy is like, the woman discovers that she's probably talking about her ex-boyfriend. Because during the conversation, the friend kind of lets slip like, oh, well, he's really struggling with getting over his ex, but like, it's okay. Cause like, we're going to take it slow and blah, blah, blah. And so she decides after this conversation that she's going to go to his office where he works and sort of, I guess, confront him a little bit about like dating her friend, but also like not being over her. And they have this like big long conversation about like their history and, like what, I guess, kind of like what love really means. And so she's like being kind of flirtatious with him, and he's not really having it, but like there is a little bit back to her, but like he's not really having the full 100% given back to her about being flirtatious and not letting her, kind of trick him or convince him or whatever. So she leaves, and then, time passes a little bit, and she goes to a cafe and, has like coffee with her friend, and then he shows up. And so she kind of, when he, like, the friend doesn't know that that's her ex-boyfriend, which is weird, because if you're friends, in theory, who your friends' partners are. But whatever, I guess it's been, maybe they met after they broke up, so she didn't actually know. Whatever, I'm not gonna pick apart that. So she's like, okay, I'm gonna leave, like I'm just gonna let you guys have your nice romantic thing together. And she kind of says like, no, I want you to stay. Like, I want you to meet him and kind of give me your opinion on him. And so she stays, and they start talking whatever. And she kind of just through the conversation and just the situation, everything, kind of tells her ex-boyfriend, like, you need to pick me or her. Like, you either need to tell her that you're in love with me or be in love with her still. And so it's like a very selfish choice. And her friend is kind of like it's out of nowhere, but it like really just sort of ruins her friend's sort of mentality of like, oh, I met this nice guy and now she's like being crazy about it. And yeah, so like, again, like nothing really huge happens, but like in that period of like 30-ish minutes, like this entire story of like this relationship, and it's like a love triangle like all happens all at once, and you get the full gist of the story, everything happens, and then it's wrapped up very nicely, very neatly. It's intriguing, it's interesting, it's like, the conversations are really good, and then it's kind of like not a great thing to do to your friend. I guess. The second story is a college student who's on the verge of being failed by this like kind of like less than sympathetic professor. He's comes into the middle of a classroom and starts like hands and knees bowing and begging for him not to fail him, because if he fails him, he's not going to be able to go and move on to this like career path that he's been given. And another professor also comes later and talks to him about it and says like, you can't fail him, he's like one of the best students we have. But like, anyways, so the whole thing is his perspective is that this guy's not trying hard enough, not doing a good enough job, but obviously he's like a good student because everybody else in the school thinks he's passing, and it's just this one class. So the student leaves and he goes and meets up with, he's like sort of hooking up with this much older single mother, and he comes up with a plan that he's going to send her to go and like seduce the professor and then sort of create like a scandal, because it turns, it's announced that the professor is winning this like big national award that goes out to whoever, like, professors that are very important and blah, blah. And so he convinces her like, okay, we're going to like set him up and kind of take him down by causing this big national scandal, and he won't win this award, and et cetera, et cetera. And so she goes and meets up with him at like because he's written a book, and or like a story. I don't know. It's like, I think it's a book. And so she goes and meets him, tells him she's such a huge fan, and that waits for everybody else to leave and says like, oh, like I would love to be able to read part of your book to you. And so they go back to his office, and she reads a passage from his own book that is a very, very graphic depiction of a woman performing oral sex on testicles. And but like, very sexual, very flirtatious, very like, trying to trick him into doing something that he shouldn't. And she can obviously tell that he's aroused, and the whole plan is that she's going to record him, or no, she's recorded the whole thing, and she says like, I'm going to give you this recording of me like sexually reading it, but what I want for you to record yourself pleasuring yourself to the recording I just gave you. And the professor takes it, and he agrees to do it, and he gives it back to her, and then with the promise that she's going to like email him everything, and then he'll have it for himself, because at this point she's attracted to him, and she's not really fully on board with the entire plot. She still kind of is, but she isn't. She just flip-flops a little bit. And so she goes to send it to him, but she at the university, but she accidentally sends it to the wrong email at the university, and it ends up going to his like one of his superiors at the university, and discovers that he's like being, surprise, surprise, a Japanese man being a pervert. But the college doesn't like that. The university doesn't like that. And he ends up losing his job. Whatever. I can't remember. I mean, I can't remember exactly what her job was, but she's like a proofreader for books is I think what her job is. And they both end up losing their jobs over the whole thing, which is kind of ridiculous that like, that's really what a big scandal is that anyways. So yeah. Is that it? Yeah. And then like a few like time goes by, and they like randomly run into each other on like a train, I think. Yeah, it's like a subway or train, and they sort of have like a moment of like, you know, like, oh, like our lives aren't our lives are bad, but they're not as terrible as they could be. And there's like this kind of sexual tension between them and stuff. Yeah. Anyways, it's like a very like human story that kind of like it shows like kind of a bad side of humanity, I guess. But like there's some stuff in there about like sexuality and anyways, again, very good. And then the third story is it's a little bit more on the fantasy side of things because the movie is called Wheel of Fortune of Fantasy. So it's set a little bit in the future, or it's I know. Anyways, where there's like there was like a global computer virus that had like made every person in the world's private data public, and so now a lot of people like don't trust cell phones and social media and stuff. And so a lot of people have gone back to like the days of writing letters and sending telegrams to communicate with one another. So there's a woman who she ends up going back to her high school reunion. And when she gets there, she kind of realizes that like she doesn't really fit in with people. Like she doesn't really, connect with her friends from high school, and she's like kind of having a hard time even remembering who, like she doesn't remember them as much as they remember her. Like they'll tell her stories of, do you remember when you did blah, blah, and she's kind of like, I don't. And they're like, yeah, you had this, and then she's like, yeah, not really. And so she kind of realizes that like, oh, like I don't really fit in here. I don't, like, this isn't what I had imagined it being. So then as she leaves and she's going home, and she runs into a woman at a train station that she like recognizes, and she's like, oh my God, I can't believe, like, why weren't you at the reunion? And she's like, oh, I didn't go to it. Like, what reunion? And then she's like, oh, that's fine. Like, oh my God, like, it's so great to see you. And so they start talking, like they're old friends, and they're talking about like a letter that was sent, and like, oh, did you get my letter? And like, oh, like I don't remember getting a letter, but like, okay, like, well, it's a great, oh, why don't you come over to my house and we'll have tea and whatever. And so she goes to this woman's house, and they just kind of are having this like conversation about like their lives, and they're getting married and husbands and kids and just everything that's happened over the last like 10 or 20, I think it's 20 years, the last 20 years. And then sort of at the end, after like, as their conversation's going on, it's kind of revealed that like they don't actually know each other, and they've both just mistaken one another for someone they used to know and thought it was. And like, so see, even the Japanese can't tell each other apart. But like, so then, oh, like they're both completely embarrassed, and like they don't want to continue because they're like, oh my God, this is so shameful, because of course it's shameful. And so they leave, and then as the one woman, like they separate, they go to the train station and they separate, but then they sort of have this moment of like, it was really nice to pretend like we were friends. Like it was really nice to pretend like you were this person that I know and I was this person that you know. And so then they kind of have a moment of like, why don't we just keep pretending like we're friends? Like, why don't we just keep pretending that I'm this person and you're this person, and we'll just never mention it again? And they're like, yep, that's great. I would love to do that. And so they just like continue on being friends who know each other but don't know each other. And it's like very beautiful, and like the ending is very, very nice. Like it's a nice sort of like moment of like, why does society need to be so like confined to these defined rules and guidelines that we have to follow? Why can't we just be friends who like each other? And so it's just like a very beautiful ending to the story. And the reason why I think it's better than Drive My Car is because there just wasn't a lot of like wasted time. There are like 3 30-minute little shorts in one movie, and you get all the information, all the pieces connect. It's not like, the conversations are very nice and easy to listen to and watch, and like it's just a very beautiful, easy movie. And so I just like, that's why I think it's a better movie, because in Drive My Car it was a little bit long. There was a little bit of stuff that like just didn't need to be in there. A lot of boring conversations, and then like the you know, like the highs were good, the highs were high, but like the lows were pretty low. Whereas I felt like this one was just like consistently at a high, and I really, really enjoyed just like the story, the interactions, the characters, that everything was like nicely wrapped up in 30 minutes. I mean, I feel like all three of them could have been full length movies themselves. Like they didn't need to be confined to a series of short films inside a movie, but like it was still like really enjoyable, and I love that kind of filmmaking. Let me take a sip of my water. I can't believe that Haru's been very calm and quiet since he got in here. Number 6 is, I guess, now multiple time Oscar award winner Sean Baker's Red Rocket is my number 6. It's crazy to think that he's a multiple time Oscar winner now, but like, I mean, it's deserved. I just never thought that an indie filmmaker that I love his weird, very like human guerrilla style filmmaking like would get recognized for Oscars and then now get like a Criterion release of Anora, which is crazy. Anyways, Red Rocket. Simon Rex, if people are not familiar with Simon Rex, he's a comedic actor, ? I guess he is, who was in a lot of the Scary Movie franchise, and also used to do like amateur solo gay porn or just porn, which it fits right into the story because he's like he returns home to Texas to live with his estranged wife. They're both washed up porn stars, and also his wife's mother. But he like really struggles to find work because obviously he has like a long gap in his work history, and also they find out about his porn past, which I guess a lot of places in Texas don't want to hire you because you did porn, which is, I mean, just very silly. But so he's kind of unable to find work, so he goes back to this woman and her woman and her son, who he used to like deal pot for like 20 years ago before he left to go be an adult film star. And, you know, I guess, you know, he was very untrustworthy then. And so they don't really trust that he's not going to smoke all the pot himself, but they reluctantly let him do it. And then, you know, he comes through, he sells everything, he brings back the money. They're like kind of very impressed with him. He's almost taken like a new approach of like, you know, like my life fucking sucks and like I'm completely over, like I'm you know, like my career's over, I'm done, and I guess I just have to like try and be an adult now. And so, you know, he kind of proves to his ex-wife, or I guess not ex-wife because they are legally still married, but like proves to his estranged wife and his mother-in-law that he can like kind of provide enough because he's getting money from being a drug dealer, which a pot dealer in Texas, I don't know how much money you're making. Like, you know, he does make like a significant amount of money. Like that seems kind of wacky. So he kind of like he starts paying money, buying food, buying groceries for the house. He does like repairs and stuff, which is kind of the agreement from the mother-in-law of like, if you're going to live here, you have to like at least be, you know, you can't sleep all day. You have to get up and like fix things and make money and whatever. So he starts doing that. But then he starts sleeping on the couch, and then he sort of like reconnects a little bit with his ex-wife, and then he starts sleeping in the same bed as her, and then they start being romantic and intimate again with each other. And so things are like kind of, you know, they're kind of going well for him. And then to celebrate like a big moment, he takes them to like this local donut shop, which is like apparently very good. And when he goes there, he meets a girl who's working behind the counter and becomes completely obsessed with her and her look. And her name is Strawberry, which is very silly. And if you are thinking, hey, I wonder if the girl behind the counter that the former adult film star met is of legal age, I bet you're thinking yes. And I think you are incorrect. It is very clearly pointed out that she is 17 and in high school. And Simon Rex is like, I don't know, 42. And he becomes like completely obsessed with her. And to the point where like he convinces her to like quit her job and that he's going to make her like the next big porn starlet, and he's going to get back in the business. He's going to make millions of dollars because she's so young and beautiful and innocent, and that, you know, she's got like kind of an accent, and she's going to be like, everybody's going to be all over. They're going to want her for everything. And so like the rest of the movie is, I mean, the subject matter may be questionable to some because of the legality of the events that occur. But they start like fantasizing about like moving and buying this big fancy house with a white picket fence, and they're going to make so much money, and they're going to go back to Vegas and like make all this money doing porn. And then obviously like the wife finds out everything, and then everything goes to shit. And then he like convinces the girl to break up with her boyfriend, and like it just like all these, you know, like he's essentially ruining everybody's lives because he's become very obsessed with like, even though he'd conceded to like, okay, my career's done, but now he's back to like, well, like I can be 10 times bigger than I was before. And it's just like the obsession over like fame and like being a young, you know, untouched virgin and beauty and blah blah blah. And so like it is kind of creepy, but like it's very well done. It's very, very sexualizing of the 17-year-old girl who is, I think she's in her 20s. It's fine. The actress is in her 20s, but it's the movie that she's very, very sexualized as a 17-year-old. But I mean, yeah, it's incredible. Like just like the way that he films everything, the style, the fact that it's budgeted, like it looks budgeted, but it's very much like low budget independent filmmaking. Everything's very simple. Like, yeah, it's a very cool movie. Like I really, really do like it. And I highly recommend you go see it. You should see every one of Sean Baker's movies because he's an incredible filmmaker. All right, number 5. This is going longer than I shouldn't have preambled so much. Number 5, that would be Joachim Trier's The Worst Person in the World, which at one point was like almost like was in the top 3, but then just, you know, shuffling things around. It happens. So yeah, there's a young woman, and she has a boyfriend, and he's a writer, and she's like, kind of lost in her life, and she gets encouragement to sort of like do more writing, and she writes this like very, very sexual story that her boyfriend thinks is incredible, and she should post it online, and so she does, and it gets very popular, and she becomes kind of like, you know, an overnight celebrity a little bit. And you know, he's kind of like, he's still a known writer, but he's not really like as like he's struggling a little bit with his writing and becoming back to like the levels as I think most writers do when they write one really good thing, and then the next thing they write necessarily isn't as good. And so she ends up meeting this other guy at I don't remember, like some event. And they have like a really strong connection, but they're both in relationships, and it's made very clear that like, we're not doing this. I'm not cheating on you. Like I'm not cheating on my boyfriend. I'm not expecting you to cheat on your girlfriend, but they spend the entire night together, and they just have this like very, very strong connection. And it kind of makes her second guess like the relationship with her boyfriend, because he's so famous and people like always want to talk about him and hear his opinions on things. And even though now she's become this like kind of overnight minor celebrity, nobody really cares about her when he's around. And so she kind of feels like ignored, and she feels stuck. And so she just like spur of the moment, just kind of like breaks up with her boyfriend, like I'm fucking out of here, goes and immediately moves in with the other guy, who then she like kind of immediately convinces to break up with his girlfriend. And so then they just start living together. But then after they've lived together for a little while, they just kind of like realize that she's unhappy being with this guy. And like she's just made like a big, huge life decision, and has like it's not working out in her favor, and so she like leaves him. And after she leaves him, and she's like just living her life, and some time passes, she runs into her ex-boyfriend's brother, who tells her that he's got pancreatic cancer and he's like dying, like he's well beyond recovery. And now, of course, she feels guilty about it, and so she goes to see him in hospital, and she finds out that she finds out she's pregnant. It's very obviously the other guy's baby, but she sort of like tries to vaguely imply that it's probably his, just because he's dying and she wants to like make him feel good, but like he clearly knows that it's not his baby because the timeline doesn't work out. But she's like trying to like make him feel better about everything, and she just has like sort of this regret of like what she did and the decisions she's made. And so like it's just all about like, you know, how hard life is and how difficult decisions we make are, and you never see like the end result of things because you're in the moment, and then, you know, having regret and like life changes and everything. And like it's a very human story. Not the worst person in the world. I would say just a slightly selfish woman trying to figure out her life. Not the worst person, but like, yeah, there's just like a lot of intricacies, like especially like with the relationship with her boyfriend, and then the other guy with his girlfriend, and then the two of them together once they've both broken up with their partners and move in together. And then after, like, you know, it's just all about like the human interactions in the story. Nothing really like huge happens. I mean, other than the reveal that he's got pancreatic cancer and is dying, but it's just like, yeah, it's just like the trying to get through life and figuring out who you are and realizing what you want and don't want. And I guess it's kind of a trend of this year of some of the movies I've spoken about. But yeah, like it's just like a very human story, which I love. And then what did I move? Did I miss one? That was number 5. Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. I thought I had missed one. So the top 4. And like I said at the top, these 4 have moved around and interchanged and constantly moved around. And I think this is what I'm going to settle on. So number 4 is actually something that when I had initially been writing down the movies was put in at number 1. And maybe if I had rewatched all 4 of these, it like to refresh my memory on them, I would have changed a bunch of stuff around. But you know, I was initially basing it off my first watch. But I think the other 3 have kind of like stuck in my brain. Like, sorry, initially, this was the one where I was like, this has to be my favorite, the number 1 movie 2021. Has to be. But then over the course of time and seeing the other movies, I think they sort of like had a lot more lasting impression in my mind and in my brain about like visuals and what I like, how they look and the stories and the moments in the movies that I actually remember. So that's kind of what bumped this down to number 4. So that would be The Harder They Fall, which was it's on Netflix. It is sort of a Western, if you want, a black Western. And I love Westerns. If I've said this on the podcast before, that Westerns are a big thing that I enjoy, because I am a white man who's approaching his 40s, and that's what dad's like, even though I'm not a dad. I mean, I guess I'm a cat dad, but it's done differently in the sense of like the way it's presented and the visual look of it, and then the fact that it has like hip hop put into the score and the soundtrack of the movie, but it's not distracting hip hop. It's hip hop that actually genuinely works with the pacing and the style of the film. And like, it's got some bigger named actors in it. It's got Idris Elba. It's got pre-problematic Jonathan Majors, Regina King, Zazie Beetz, Delroy Lindo, Lakeith Stanfield. Like, it's got like a real solid cast of like all of the kind of, I guess, like more popular, like best African American and black actors working today. But yeah, I mean, it's like a black spaghetti Western kind of with hip hop. It's about like getting revenge on a crime boss who wronged you. There's a little bit of a getting the band back together vibe of like introducing these other like gunslingers and, characters who have been wronged by the villain and trying to kind of get everybody together to go, get revenge on him after he escapes from prison. But yeah, I mean, for me, it is like the music is huge. The editing, the films, like the stylistic choices, the camera work, the camera movement, the shot selection, the cinematography. It's all like beautifully done. The acting is really good. Like Idris Elba in a Western. Like, what's not to like about Idris Elba in a Western? But yeah, like there's like everybody's like super cool. It's got a fun visual look to it. There's like it just, everything about it was like so beautiful and cool. I maybe, again, if I had rewatched it since 2021 when I initially watched it, maybe I would have bumped it back up. But I mean, it's 139 minutes and I didn't think I had the time to do that between the last recording and this recording. So I'm just going to bump it down to number 4, and then maybe I'll regret that later if I ever rewatch it. But yeah, just a really cool movie. Now we go. Hey, out of the way, sir. Out of the way. So then this one definitely moved into number 1. It was number 1 for a while. I know Scott and I had a discussion about whether or not it counts as a movie. Because in previous years with things that were, I guess, similar to it, we didn't include them as movies. But I think because of what this is visually and like, it's really hard to describe. So it's Bo Burnham's Inside, which is, theoretically speaking, like at its core, is a stand-up comedy special. But because it was done during COVID, it is very much filmed more like a movie. And it's like a series of small like songs and vignettes and skits, but it's got an overlying plot of the creative space and working through your issues and being your harshest critic while also kind of losing your mind completely because of the COVID lockdown and everything like that, like all the stress that everybody was going through, and also the fact that he had literally in the songs and the story, like, he had stopped performing because he was having anxiety issues and stress issues and just like not enjoying doing comedy anymore. And then right when he decides, okay, I'm healthy, I'm good, I feel good, I'm going to do a comedy special. And then pandemic happens, so he can't actually perform in front of an audience again. And so a lot of it is just sort of like working through like what is life going to be going forward, and like how are we going to change after a pandemic of like performing in front of other people and being live. And like I guess, like, of course now looking back at it and you're like, well, it was ultimately not that big of a deal, and we're kind of back to normal now. But yeah, I mean, this thing is like, I mean, I've rewatched it so many times. I can sit there and physically watch it. I can put it on the background and I like know all the words to the songs, and you can just listen to it on Spotify. And then he also, in 2022, released Bo Burnham The Inside Outtakes, which honestly is just as good. It's just good. It's got like a little bit more of like a behind the scenes look at things he was dealing with, like as he was going through the process. There are some other songs on it that are also really good. And in fact, like, and the thing is, like, I listen to the actual album a lot. Like, it is kind of a thing that's on repeat for me. And I often go like back and forth on what my favorite song is, or like what's the song that's stuck in my head. And I think as of now, the best song, or the song that is stuck the most in my head, is from the Outtakes. But yeah, I'm just going to do the first one. It's an incredible look at just, like the creative mentality and like, how you work through the process and, lack of confidence in yourself and how you've, everybody's their harshest critic, which like I struggle with big time. And also just like Bo is such an enjoyable human being and an enjoyable presenter and performer. And like, it's definitely a huge thing that Scott and I bonded over for sure. Like it was very much something that we would put on in the car on the way to, like wherever, driving to Seattle for wrestling or just going anywhere where we would just sort of like goof around and have fun doing the things we were doing. And we knew all the words to all the songs. And so it was something that we bonded over. So it's been a consistent listen for me going, ever since everything happened. And I think it counts as a movie. So if you don't think it counts as a movie, well, you can go and I was going to say dig a hole, but that's not where he is. Moving on. Let me adjust because my foot's falling asleep. I'm an old man. Now, it brings me to number two, number three, or number one, number two. This is another tough one because I think initially I had number two as number one until I kind of like thought about it a little bit more. Like I really, I really had like a moment of like, okay, what is actually the thing that stuck with me the most? And the fact that I had this movie at number one and the movie that is at number one were switched. And after really thinking about it, and if I'm basing this off of like what really stuck with me more, I had to switch them because I actually had to look up some plot stuff for this one and I didn't for the other one. And that's kind of where I was like, if I can remember the entire thing, I think that one's number one. I don't know if that's a valid argument, but that is the argument I am presenting to all of you people. So number two is The Green Knight, which I'm thinking might be an unpopular opinion. I'm not sure. I don't know how many people actually saw it, but I don't remember there being a lot of talk from people about how good it was. And I think what I like about it is it's a very risky, in a positive way, movie. It's got a real unique way of telling a story that like maybe, because I mean, maybe people have heard the story before, although it's kind of like a recreation of the story. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I've been doing this for 2 hours. I'm fucking tired and hungry. But yeah, it's like a different and interesting look at like Gawain's journey. So one of the Knights of the Round Table. So, and like, I love Dev. I think Dev is one of my favorite actors. I'll watch anything he's in. There's this one, there's also The Wedding Guest, there's Lion, Slumdog. He's great. I love him in everything he's in. I believe when Scott and I fixed the Oscars, I gave him the Oscar for Best Actor for Lion, perhaps. But yeah, so anyways, it's the Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. The Green Knight is summoned and appears to Arthur and the court, telling them that any knight who wishes to receive the green axe, which is sort of like a very powerful, like, important weapon that will help bring you to like your greatest glory, your highest highs, your peak, your whatever. That if you wish to get this, you may strike him down now, but you will have to answer for your actions and receive a blow at the next Christmas. So your power would be fleeting, but you would be able to have like a lasting legacy and sort of this immense power and notoriety. And so none of the knights really wish to take advantage of this, but Gawain, feeling kind of like not really like animosity towards anybody, because I mean he's part of the Round Table, but like wanting more, like the desire and the want to become more, at the the behest of the other knights, decides to take the challenge upon himself, and he gets up, and everyone's sort of playing it off as like, well, it's just a fiction, it's not a real thing, it's just it's like a gag, it's a joke, it's a performance. But like Gawain does it, he strikes down the knight, cuts off the knight's head. Everybody's kind of like taken aback by it. The knight collapses, and there's this moment of like, what have I done, or what is the circumstances that will come from this. The knight then gets up, picks up his head, says he'll see him at Christmas, and fucking at the Green Chapel, and says, okay, I will see you at the Green Chapel at Christmas. Done. So now Gawain has taken the step of gaining the power and the presence to be like remembered as one of these greats. And he, you get a little bit of like his story of like what has happened after receiving this green axe, but now he must sort of go on his journey to reach the Green Chapel to answer and receive his one strike. And so, the story and plot from that point on are not there. It's not like they're not strong, but it's not as prominent as the actual, like the visual look of what's happening, because it's very fantasy. It's very like meeting strange people, creatures, sort of like mythological stuff on his journey as he kind of is trying to find where he needs to go to get to this chapel. And over the course of time, he gets told like, oh, you go to this river, or the water flows in this direction, and blah, blah, blah. And so he goes, and then he's like, he needs to escape certain things that happen. And I mean, I guess I'm spoiling the ending. No, not really. Whatever, I will. Who cares? So like he eventually, at the end of the journey, he gets to the chapel, and he just has to sit and rest. But like he's very defeated. His like, he looks emaciated a little bit. He's not happy. He's in like a terrible mindset and a terrible physical state. And when he gets there, and he just sort of collapses and waits, because he has to wait until Christmas morning, and he's arrived early. So he just sits there, and the Green Knight is sitting on its throne, like frozen in place, sort of as a tree, because it's a Green Knight. And, the Green Knight awakes, and he sort of, Gawain is very like distraught and like physically, emotionally, mentally just drained. And the knight kind of tells him, this kind of gives him the story of whatever, like the history of the chapel and the Green Knight, like kind of all that stuff is revealed a little bit. And he tells him, okay, like it is now time for you to take your blow. And as he's waiting for the blow to happen, he like completely freaks out and runs and dodges the strike, runs away from the chapel and leaves. And then we get like a sort of time moving forward, where like Gawain goes back and he gets married, and his father dies, so he becomes the king of that region, and he has a son. And then the son dies in battle, and then after his son dies, he's not the same king. So like he gets all of this hatred from his people, the people of his area, wherever his lordship's reign. And people start to like really resent him as the king, and he becomes very miserable, and his life is just like, and I think does his wife die? I think his wife dies, and his dog runs away, and his pickup truck stops working, and his beer's got a trans woman on the front of it, and something along those lines. And then it is revealed that all of this is a vision to him from the Green Knight of like what would be if that decision was made. And he just very reluctantly says like, no, I don't want to live that life. I can't live that life. And he is struck down by the Green Knight. And I implied that he will now be taking that place, sort of like he will become the Green Knight. And I think it's just like one of the most beautifully visual movies I've seen in a long time. There's like the operatic score for this movie is incredible. I listen to the score on Spotify all the time. There's some interesting design work. I mean, like it doesn't really like beautify the Arthurian time. It's very grimy, grungy at times, but then there's like a pop of color or a pop of like very distinct visual, like standout of something. Dev's incredible in it. But yeah, it exceeded my expectations big time. It was a very, very cool movie. I loved the sound. The sound was so good. And then, yeah, the design of the Green Knight was like pretty cool as well. Like I really enjoyed that. So, I'm getting spam. That was a 243 area code. But yeah, it's just a very, very cool movie. But the fact that I had to like look up a little bit of the plot and story kind of made me think maybe this isn't number one. Maybe it's number two. I mean, or three or four, like, which leads me to number one. And I guess I can be pretentious or a hipster at times when it comes to movies. And sure, it's all perspective and opinion and things, but very rarely do I turn off a movie and I just kind of sit in silence in the dark and contemplate like what I had seen, because it was so beautiful and complex, and just like I don't know if I was going through something at the time that I watched this, but it really hit me in a way that I was like, I'm never going to forget the moment I watched this movie. And it is a French language animated drama based on a Japanese manga. It is called The Summit of the Gods. I believe it's on Netflix. I definitely did not watch it in French. I believe I watched it in Japanese. It is in fact on Netflix. I believe I watched it in Japanese with English subtitles, because the characters are Japanese. Like their names: Habu, Fukamichi, Ryoko, Kishi. They're all Japanese names. So I thought it was weird to watch them speaking French. And so, yeah, I definitely watched it in Japanese with English subtitles. It's a beautiful movie. It is, I mean, from an animation standpoint, it's an interesting style of animation, because it's kind of, it is like anime, or like an anime manga kind of style, but like it also kind of has that feel of like a rotoscope. Like they animated it over top of actual people, but that's not what it is. But that's like kind of the visual look to it, if that makes any sense. So it's there's a journalist in Japan who is obsessed with George Mallory's climb of Everest in 1924. And so he's like doing a bunch of research on like, was Mallory the first person to actually reach the summit, like the top? And during his research, he finds out about this very popular, very famous climber, who he believes was able to get a hold, or he owns the Mallory's expedition camera that was never recovered, or like never found after the supposed climb, and it may or may not have inside of it like old nope, I lost my what's the word for the thing that's inside cameras? God, 2 hours and I've eaten nothing but coffee. Film. God damn it. I should just turn this off right now. What is happening? There might be old film inside the camera, proving for a fact that Mallory did in fact get up there, or possibly not. Like, he's just very curious and obsessed with like the story of Mallory climbing it. And so he goes to find this guy, and he's trying to get information out of him. And the guy's kind of like not really that talkative about anything. Like, he doesn't really want to communicate with this journalist guy. And then, they have this conversation and they meet and whatever. And then he leaves, and then overnight, this climber guy like disappears. Like, he's just gone. And so some time passes, and the journalist decides that he's going to go to Everest, and he's going to sort of track down more information, or kind of, the intention isn't for him to climb Everest. It's just for him to go find out more information on this camera and Mallory's climb and all that information. And when he gets there, he's sort of given the information that there's like, oh, there's a guy here who's like a little bit up the mountain, and he's planning on doing the first solo climb of the southwest face in the middle of winter. No one's ever done that before. And like, oh, maybe go talk to him. And so when the journalist goes up to find, like, oh, it's the same guy. It's the guy who has the camera that disappeared in the middle of the night. His name's Habu. And he's like, oh, like, I can't believe I found you here. And he's like, I would love to do, like a report. I'd like to do like a report, sort of like documenting your climb. Like, would that be okay? And the man, like Habu, kind of like very reluctantly kind of agrees, but he said, like, if you're gonna go on this climb with me, you really need to train, because you have to be able to do this climb as well. And so he decides, like, okay, like, I'm going to start training for this. He's sort of like, like they kind of are bonding and forming a friendship, but also like Habu's kind of keeping him at a little bit of a distance, even though like they are kind of bonding, but he's like not really giving him a lot of like personal information or stories about the Mallory climb or any of that stuff. He's keeping them at a distance. You kind of see the passage of time of them building towards this climb, and then they set off to start this journey. And so they're going, and, they take breaks. They take, it's just like kind of like, showing them building a friendship a little bit, and like, more of just like this adventure of exploring a thing that's never been done before. And they have like these moments kind of sprinkled into the journey of like a little conversation here, or stopping to have hot coffee, or setting up a camp for the night and having a little conversation before bed. And just like those kind of like little human moments happen throughout the time. And then as they're approaching a certain rough area, he ends up like falling behind, and he's like very much Fukamichi is the guy, and he ends up like kind of falling behind, and Habu makes the decision of like, I'm gonna have to turn around and help this guy, and it's possibly gonna be me forfeiting my record attempt for climbing. But like, so Fukamichi like is like kind of out of it. Like, I guess whether or not that's elevation or dehydration or whatever. And he wakes up at sort of like back down the mountain, and when he asks like, oh, like what happened and where all the information is, and like Habu isn't there, and they're like, oh, like he brought you back, and then he went back up to finish his climb, and Fukamichi's like recovering, and for a little bit, a period of time, and then the Sherpa guy who's sort of like was helping Habu a little bit, kind of gives him a package from Habu, and now he's like recovered, but like he's not, his health isn't great, and he's the story's over, so he goes back to Japan, and he like opens the package, and the package has like the Mallory's camera in it and some other stuff and like a note, and like he like never finds out, like never hears from Habu again, never finds out if he completed the climb, if he died on the climb, if he made it back down and just disappeared into nothing because he like that was all he wanted to do. And so it's like just like this ending that just kind of like hits you like really hard, especially if you've been committed to this movie the whole time. And just like the fact that like the way that the mountains and the atmosphere and the clouds, like the way that everything is animated, like it genuinely feels like it's a documentary. Like I think there was a time, I think at the beginning, where I thought that it was like an animated recreation of like an actual thing, like an actual documentary, but it was done in animation. And so like, I just think at the end of it, like I turned off the TV, and I just kind of sat there in like darkness for like 10, 15, 20 minutes, just like kind of like taking in like everything that I had seen, and just kind of like visualizing like what had happened in the story and like what they were going through. And like, it was just like such an interesting like piece of like beautiful artwork, beautiful animation. Like, this is an anime podcast, so it shouldn't surprise you that it's number one, but like, yeah, it's just like, it's such a beautiful story and a beautiful visual, and like the ending is kind of just heartbreaking. And so like, yeah, it stuck with me a really long time. I did not have to remember the plot or the visuals or the story or anything. The only thing I'm trying to remember was what his name was, but yeah. So that's the best of 2021. I wish I wasn't doing it alone, but I guess I'm doing a lot of things alone for the rest of my life. If you enjoyed, please let me know. Or if you want, I am going to post on Letterboxd. The lists will be public for the honorable mentions, and the top 10 and the 3 favorites will all be in there. And then next week, what's next week? Next week is the 13th. Ooh, man, that's going to be hard because I think March Madness. Let me see here. March Madness tournaments. When is the first? So the first 4 is the 18th and 19th. So in theory, by the 19th, I will know the lowest seeds that are in. So the first round actually starts the 20th and 21st. So March Madness will be the Friday the 21st, I guess. Because I mean 19th and 18th are Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So maybe the 20th. I'll have to see what my work schedule works out to be and how available people are to do it with me, because obviously doing it by myself doesn't make any sense. 20th or 21st will be March Madness, so keep your eyes, ears, beans, and grippers ready, because that's when it's going to happen. And then, so next week, I don't have a plan for next week. So if anyone would like to send $25 to paypal.me/SarenSawboss with a request of a movie under 2 hours, then I will do that next week. Or if there are several, I will do several. And if not, I guess I will just do an all news or rambles or more gross snacks. I don't know. I'll figure it out because I got a week. I hope you enjoyed. Of course, I know this is the end of the podcast and nobody's listening anymore, but Saren Softpaws on stuff, social media, Letterboxd, Twitter, Instagram, and then paypal.me/Saren Softpaws. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed, and I'm going to regret all of my life choices because did I make this the right list? Who's to say?